Oh, howdy all, grab yourself a beer, it's time for some Path of Exile discussion. During yesterday's discussion of the patch notes for 3.15, I had to really skim over the Zana mods. And that's because that video just got so long, it was an hour and a quarter or so, and it would have been longer if I'd given the Zana mods the time that they deserve. But these are a really important part of the patch notes, and they have a big impact on endgame gameplay. They don't really start having much of an impact on gameplay until you get to quite late in progression. So when I say quite late in progression, I typically mean 24, maybe 28 watchstones. At that point, you will start considering using these Zana mods in large numbers. And they end up being one of the biggest factors in both the Trade League economy and particularly the ratio in prices between Chaos Orbs and Exalted Orbs. I'm just going to go out on a limb and make a prediction here. This could end up being wrong, but I think that we will see Exalted Orbs settle around the 60 to 80 Chaos mark this league. So that is much, much, much lower than in most previous leagues. This isn't going to mean that Exalted Orbs will be easier to acquire. What it's going to mean is that each Chaos Orb that you get will have more buying power. The reason for this is that the Delirium the Delirium mod is something that is just so spammable and it offers so much loot that a lot of players will just be running it back to back to back to back to back. That's only a small section of the player base that will be doing that, but those players will have an insatiable demand for Chaos Orbs. They're going to be looting Exalt after Exalt after Exalt. They're going to be looting all sorts of other really high-end rewards, and they're going to be then putting that back into turning those into Chaos Orbs in order to keep feeding the costs of the Delirium machine. And even if that's only 0.1% of the player base, they will consume more Chaos Orbs than the rest of the economy put together. On the flip side, if you're in solo self-found, what these are going to mean for you is how easy it's going to be to access certain items. So for instance, having Delirium as an option means that you will have quite a bit more access to cluster jewels than you otherwise would have, say, for instance, in the 3.14 Ultimatum expansion. So going through them all, firstly, Fortune Favors the Brave is in an interesting place. Fortune Favors the Brave, if you're not familiar with it, it picks one of the 7 mods that are available at League at random with no weighting. So you have a 1 in 7 chance of hitting Delirium, 1 in 7 to hit Metamorph, 1 in 7 to hit Domination, and so on. This can be a bargain in some ways, but also a bit of a curse in others. So what happens with Fortune Favors the Brave is that it is cheaper than using Fortune Favors the Brave 7 times would on average give you each of these mods once, and it is quite a lot cheaper than paying the cost for each of these mods once. Paying the cost for each of these mods once is 45 Chaos, whereas using Fortune Favors the Brave 7 times is only 21. So it seems like it's a great deal. The problem is that you can't really take advantage of a lot of these mods on every map tile set, and in particular, you can't take advantage of them in conjunction with without having certain mods rolled on maps. So for instance, Delirium is something that you want to have a long, smooth layout for. You will want to have a tropical island type layout, a beach type layout. Tower is another really good map. Those burial chambers, all of those synergize really well with the Delirium mirror. Phantasmagoria is another one. All of the maps that have a very, very long series of paths that you can traverse down, so that the distance traveled by shortest path from the start of the map to the boss room is as large as possible. That's the maps that do the best with Delirium on the Zana, as a Zana mod. On the flip side, Ritual tends to be best in more open maps. So for instance, Beach is a good example here. Beach is a middle tier map for Delirium, but it's something that's really good for Ritual. Also, Ritual will be much better in Haywak Hamlet due to the Atlas passives, and some of the best maps for Delirium may be in different zones, different regions to Haywak. So for that reason, I think that you'll find that the maps that Ritual is good on, generally Delirium won't be, and that's something that really undercuts the potential of Fortune Favors the Brave. It's still okay, and it's certainly something I would consider if you're at a point where you're just desperate for more map drops and you just want to add some more juice onto a map, then it's an option, but that's really about it. Abyss is next. Abyss is in a strange place at the moment. If you're running Abysses in New Vestia, they can be amazing in terms of just adding a lot of extra monsters, a lot of extra loot onto the map. We're just talking the normal drop anywhere loot. And in particular, Abyss is really good when it's combined with more Abysses. So if you're running things like Gilded Abyss Scarabs, or even Winged Abyss Scarabs, if you can get your hands on those, that can just add a tremendous amount of monsters to a map. That's the only real use for Abyss, I think, is in conjunction with more sources of Abysses. It's something that I did to quite a bit of effect during the Ultimatum League. It's something I will probably do again this league. And so I'm kind of happy to see Abyss here, even though I think a lot of players will probably never use this. Next up, we have Anarchy, which adds 3 Rogue Exiles. This is almost never worth using as a Zana mod unless there is a challenge to kill a lot of Rogue Exiles. I kind of expect there will be, but basically I consider this to be a pretty dead mod. Rogue Exiles don't drop enough loot to be impactful, and don't drop good enough loot to be impactful. Domination comes next. Adding 3 shrines is kind of good in conjunction with the sextants that empower shrines. There's also a small number of items that interact with shrines. If your character's wearing one of those, then they can be pretty good. The main reason you would want to consider this, though, is that each shrine will be guarded by a truly massive pack of monsters, and so that can give you a lot of extra monsters on the map, and that can be worth your while. Nemesis comes next. Now, Nemesis has lost a lot of its identity. In 3.14, there was a change made to the Headhunter drop mechanics. It used to be that the only way that Headhunter could drop from a monster or be created with a Chance Orb or an Ancient Orb was when a monster was killed in a zone where that had the Zana Nemesis League flag applied to it. So that was every single zone during the Nemesis League. But more recently, it had only been during the times that you had Nemesis from the Zana map device. However, that has been changed. Headhunter has been removed from the pool of items that are Nemesis exclusive. It's still a Nemesis item, that means that, you know, for certain divination cards, it's still a Nemesis item. But it now drops anywhere at a much lower drop rate. And what this means is that Nemesis's old identity of I want a lottery ticket for a Headhunter is gone. That no longer exists. You can still run Nemesis to add packs of monsters with rare monsters in them, and you can still run Nemesis from Zana's map device on maps that where you have the Sextant mod, the very rare Sextant mod. Nemesis monsters drop additional 3 or 4 items of basic currency. That's its utility now, and I think that most players will never really have any use for this mod. Metamorph. Area contains Metamorph monsters. These can be fairly lucrative, but generally speaking, in trade leagues, Metamorph Scarabs are cheap enough that this isn't a very good deal. On the flip side, if you're in solo self-found, and if there's a challenge that requires a lot of killing Metamorphs, you might find yourself using this a bit. I think that's going to be the primary use case for it. Ritual. So Ritual was interesting in 3.14, in that, to the best of my knowledge, the vast majority of Mirror of Kalandra drops that were acquired, like that where the actual drop happened for a power gamer player. We're not talking about the ones where someone that's a casual player or semi-casual player got super lucky and got a mirror. We're talking about the people who set up their Atlas in ways to deliberately go out of their way to farm mirrors. The vast majority of mirrors that dropped for these players, they were from the Ritual reward screen. That was because of some of the specific interactions with rituals and the Secret of the Stones passive in the Uncharted Realms and Haywire Hamlet's passives related to rituals. Now, to the best of my knowledge, there's been no nerfs to any of those Haywire Hamlet shenanigans, and so the ability to force rituals onto a map using the Zana mods is going to be absolutely transformative for that type of playstyle. So what you do with this, the maps that are likely to get you mirrors are ones where you use 4 blood-filled vessels. The maps that create all of those blood-filled vessels are run just by using Ritual from Zana's map device in order to go and find as many Ritual splinters as you can. That's a playstyle that I think will be pretty popular. It's not actually the power gamers that will be using Ritual here from Zana's map device. It will be the players that are creating the blood-filled vessels to sell to those power gamers that will be using it. I think that this will be a much more popular mod than most people think. So you'll take Ritual Splinters most of the time, but Ritual does sometimes give massive rewards as well. I know there was a day that the Twitch streamer Slippery Jim was farming Rituals, and during one day he had 80 exalts worth of drops from Rituals. This is during Ritual League itself. And the interesting thing there was that most of those drops, I think, were 6 exalt and up items. So he had 2 synthesized rings that were in the 30 exalt range. He had a couple of 5 exalt items, or 5, 6, 7, 8 exalt items. And then I think his seventh best item was just an Exalted Orb. So he had 6 items that were better than an Exalt that added to about 80 Exalts, and they all sold. Lastly, we've got Delirium. This is going to be the most significant mod of them all. So Delirium just disgorges a tremendous amount of loot. Absolutely phenomenal amount of loot, and also is going to be the premier source of Delirium orbs again this league. So the Delirium meta will be that players will look for long maps that they can run quickly and that they can kill everything in. They'll be running as high a tier as they possibly can, and they'll be trying to wipe out everything in the map before the mist dissipates. You can certainly empower this strategy with some of the Atlas passives. I think it's not that which you seek. It's one of the ones past that that slows down the rate at which the Delirium mist decays behind you. So that will actually make this easier to do than the last time Zana Delirium existed, which was in Heist League. Now in Heist League, there were two factors that were affecting the exchange rate of Chaos Orbs and Exalts. One of them was the fact that Heist, just especially pre-nerf Heist, just dropped a staggering amount of Exalted Orbs. But the second one was the fact that so many Chaos Orbs were being used by Delirium on the map device. During that league, the price of Exalted Orbs stabilized in trade-enabled softcore at about 60 Chaos, and at various points it went way away from that. But I think at one point it went as low as 26 Chaos. And that was partly due to a concerted market manipulation attempt. But once that ended, it still only went back to 60. I think we may see something similar because this is just such a powerful way to play the game, especially when combined with Cyrus exclusive watchstones that raise the tier of a map to tier 17. So that can be Terror, that can be Stalwart Defenders, it can be Misinformation. They then cause these Delirium maps to drop item level 84 loot in general, and in particular, item level 84 cluster jewels, which are incredibly powerful crafting tools. Anyway, that's my thoughts on the Zana mods. If you've got comments or questions, fire away below. Otherwise, I'm going to leave it there, and I hope you have a good one. May your Val orbs have interesting results.